Hello and welcome to today's video. In this video, we are going to be talking all about planning, specifically long-term planning. We will also be getting into how to break up or chunk your assignments in order to aid with this long-term planning. When done appropriately and effectively, long-term planning can reduce procrastination, can lessen any stress or anxiety around completing an assignment, and it can also allow you to do your best academically. In this video, I'm going to be using Google Calendar. However, if you have a different weekly planner, either digital or paper, that will work just as fine. I do find that there are some benefits to using Google Calendar. The first one being if you need to share it with a teacher or anyone else that might need to see it, you have the ability to do so. You can also always access Google Calendar from your phone, which makes adding events or homework assignments really easy. Learning the process of long-term planning can definitely be challenging, and it can take some time as well. However, once you learn the steps, practice them, and can consistently put them into practice, I promise the benefits will pay off. Long-term planning can obviously be used in school, but when you are outside of school, you will be needing these skills as well. You will eventually need to pay your taxes and plan out when and how you're going to get all of that sorted. You might have to plan a wedding or an event, and having these long-term planning skills will help you be able to do all of that. So let's jump right into step one of this process. There are 3 things that you need to know before actually getting to the calendar part. The first thing you need to know is what assignments you have due. The second thing you need to know are the due dates. And then the third thing that you need to know is what the final outcome of the assignment should be. What I mean by that is if you are completing a project, you need to know exactly what the final project is supposed to look like, what it's supposed to include, how it's supposed to be done. You need to know all of that. If we're talking about a test, then you need to know exactly what is going to be on the test. Knowing this information is going to help you break up or chunk the planning of this assignment, which in my opinion is probably the most essential thing when making sure that you can get this assignment done on time. So as I already mentioned, before we get into the actual planning within Google Calendar, we need to know 3 things: the assignment name, the due date of the assignment, and we need to know what the final product should look like. Knowing that is going to help us create a plan to complete the assignment. If you have not already seen my other videos on planners or how to use Google Calendar as a planner, I'll be sure to link those here. Go check them out. In this video, I'm going to show you how to long-term plan 2 different assignments. One is a project, which for this video, we are going to be looking mostly at the report, and I'm also going to be looking at a test. As you can see, I have the date written right here, Friday, October 9th. This is necessary information to know when we move on to Google Calendar. So let's get started with the first assignment. We are going to start with the project. For those of you at an IB school, I'm going to be using personal project as our example. So here we'll type in personal project, specifically criterion B of the report. The due date for that is Wednesday, November 4th. Now, as I've already mentioned a couple of times in this video, when we are planning, we need to know what the expected outcome of the project is supposed to look like. Knowing that is then going to help us plan our completion of the assignment. So in the report for personal project in criterion B, it is broken down into 3 sections. So what we are going to write in this box right here are the names of the 3 sections. So I am going to do that right now. There we go. We have the 3 sections of this part of the report broken down, which will allow us to further break it down when we move on to Google Calendar in just a couple of minutes. Moving on to the test, we are going to write that we have an English test on Lord of the Flies. The date that this test is going to be on is going to be Wednesday, October 21st. And after checking in with the teacher, I found out that this test is going to be broken up into 2 sections. The first section is going to be multiple choice questions related to the plot, and then the second section is going to be short answer questions related to theme, conflict, and symbols. So I'm going to go in and write all of that now. One thing that I forgot to mention is for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using fake assignments, fake tests, all of that. So although personal project is an actual project that many schools do, the due dates that I have and the due dates that I set and this test right here on Lord of the Flies, this is all made up for the purpose of this video. Now, students often tell me that they don't want to break up or chunk an assignment. They think that they will just be able to get it done before the due date. Now, this might be true. They might be able to get it complete before the due date. However, it might not be done to the best of their ability. Think about it this way. If you are an athlete, let's say you're a football player, if during the off season you decide that you want to get stronger and faster, you'll need a plan to do this. It will probably include a nutrition plan, a training plan. You might need to meet with a trainer. There's things that you need to implement in order to reach your goal. The same thing is true with any assignment in school. It's one thing to know that you have an assignment and to know what the due date is, but in order to do your best and to make sure you reach your goal, you have to put some sort of plan in place. Now, let's move on to step number 2, which is using the information that we just wrote down about our assignments to put into Google Calendar to actually create the plan. Now that we have the assignment name, the due date, and have broken down the assignment into manageable chunks, we can now move on to Google Calendar. As you can see, I have the month view on my calendar. The first step to creating any plan is to write in the due date. So we are going to go to November, click on November 4th because that is the day the assignment is due. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos on Google Calendar, you will know that I recommend when a student is using Google Calendar to plan to title the event homework, and then down here in the description box, this is where they will write what the homework is that they're going to complete. The reason why I recommend this is because if you were to go in and create an event for each assignment that you have, depending on the day, you might have 3, 4, 5, maybe even more different events that will eventually start to clutter your calendar. However, if you only have one event titled homework for each day, your calendar will look a little bit less cluttered and it will give you room to put in any other events that might not be related to homework. So I'm going to go in and title this homework, as I just said. And then down here, we will write criterion B. Again, I've said this before, but just make sure that anytime you put in a homework event, you keep the color the same. I'm going to keep it this yellow color. That's the color of my calendar. But if you want to change it, that's fine. Just be sure that all homework events are the same color. And then we'll hit save. And there we go. Now let's go back to October. So looking at the calendar, we have just under 4 weeks until this assignment is due. As we know from our plan in our Google Doc, there are 3 major parts or sections to this assignment. So what I would recommend doing is giving yourself 1 week to complete each of those sections. Now, it might not take you a full week to complete each section. It might just take you a couple of days. And if so, that's great. Try and get it done a little bit earlier. But giving yourself the time to really put in the time and effort to complete the report to the best of your ability, I think is really important. So let's go into next Friday. That's a week from today. We will title this homework, as I mentioned. And then here down in the description box, we will write develop criteria for outcome should be complete. Before I say this, I just want to go back here and at the beginning of this post, write that this is for personal projects. This will just allow you to stay a little bit more organized for when you have multiple assignments that will all go into the same event. So we'll hit save. So now what I'm going to do is go into October 23rd and October 30th, create a new event titled homework, and in the description box, I will include that section 2 should be done on the 23rd and section 3 should be done on the 30th. So I'm going to go in and do that right now. So as you can see, I created these 2 events. If you click on this, you will see that I wrote in personal project here with plan and record development process of product, which is the second section of the report that needs to be done. And then again, if you click on this one right here, you will see that the 3rd section is written down as well. So let's do a quick review. The first step that I did when using this Google Calendar was to write the due date of the assignment. The second step was to go in and write the mini due dates that we created in order to make sure that this assignment gets complete. Now let's move on to the 3rd and final step. It's one thing to write in the due dates. That's great. It is a necessary part of this process. However, let's say on Monday, you go into this calendar to see what you have to work on and nothing is written there because all you wrote in regards to personal project is that we have to have section 1 done by Friday. So step 3 is to go into each individual day, create an event titled homework, and remind yourself that you have to work on the appropriate section. Let's start with tomorrow, which is Saturday the 10th. If we click on it to create an event that, as we know, will be titled homework, here we will write personal project so we can quickly know what we need to do. Now here we will write work on develop criteria for outcome section. I'm also going to go up here to change the time. So automatically all day is checked off. I'm going to uncheck that. What I recommend you doing is putting in your homework for a time that you most likely will be doing the homework. So if you know that you have practice or a club or a game or anything at 10 o'clock on Saturday, I don't recommend setting this event to go off at 10 o'clock. So just make sure that you change the time to the afternoon or whenever you think you'll actually be doing your homework. The reason I recommend doing this is because if you use your calendar for other events, it will just keep everything organized if you set the event to go off at the appropriate time. I also recommend changing the end time. This just helps with your time management skills. So if you know you're going to be working on this for, let's say, an hour and a half, then I recommend having it end at 11:30. Again, getting into this detail just helps keep you a bit more organized. As you can see, this looks a little bit differently than it does right here. The reason for that is that we set a time for this, where this event is meant to go off all day. The reason why I didn't set a time for these deadlines is because it's just that it is a deadline. It's meant for you to know that that assignment should get done by that day. So what I would recommend is going in to each individual day and creating an event the way that we did with this one here for Saturday the 10th. Make sure you set it at a time that you will most likely be doing the work because it will help you plan if you have other events going on in that day. Now, as you can see, the last deadline that we put in the calendar is for October 30th. However, personal project isn't due until November 4th. I usually recommend that my students complete their work, especially a larger assignment, a few days before the due date. The reason for this is that it will give you just a little bit of time to make any final edits, ask any questions if you have them. You can meet with your teacher or your supervisor or anything like that. It will also eliminate the potential for procrastinating. So even though we wrote down that we are planning to finish the report on the 30th, what I would recommend is going in, let's change the month to November, and on Monday, create an event, as always titled homework, that you remind yourself to do all of those things. So we'll write personal project. We'll say meet with supervisor, ask any final questions, make any final edits before Wednesday. And again, where this is more of a deadline, you can absolutely go in and change the time to maybe before school, a time that you know you're meeting with your supervisor. But where this is more of a deadline as opposed to an actual assignment, I think it is fine if you just leave it as an all-day event. And so we will hit save and come back here. And that is how I would recommend you long-term planning an assignment. Let's go back to October and we will start focusing on our English test. So again, like with personal projects, step number 1 is putting in the due date, or in this case, the test date. So we will go to the 21st, create an event, homework, and down here we will write English the same way that we wrote with personal project. It's really good to get in the habit of including which class the homework is for. And we will write Lord of the Flies. Again, this is a deadline, so we can leave it going all day. If you want to change it to the time that you are going to have English class, that is fine as well. So for this test, we have a little over a week and a half to prepare for it. As we know from our plan and our Google Doc, there are 2 sections that this test is going to be broken up into. So now that we've finished step 1 in this, which is writing the due date, let's move on to step 2, which is writing our own mini deadlines. So the first section of this test is going to be multiple choice questions on the plot. So if we have about a week and a half to prepare for this, what I would recommend is spending about maybe 3 or 4 days working on the plot, 3 or 4 days reviewing the theme, conflict, and symbols, which are going to be in the second part of the test. And then let's leave a couple of days before the test in case you have any final questions or want to meet with your teacher beforehand. So let's go into Tuesday. And we will write English, and we can say finish studying the plot of Lord of the Flies. Now, because on this day you are going to actually be going in and studying, I recommend changing the time. So if you know you're going to get home from school at around 4 o'clock, why don't we set the time for about 4:30? And again, pencil in as much time as you think you're going to need. So if you think you're going to study for about 2 hours, set it for about 2 hours. We'll hit save. So now that we've penciled in the first deadline in this study week, let's now go in and write the second deadline, which is preparing for the short answer questions. So we'll give ourselves an additional 3 or 4 days. We'll make our next deadline on Saturday. Finish reviewing conflict and symbols. Hit save. And then a couple of days before, we will write in a reminder to meet with your teacher or to ask any final questions before the test. This is more of a deadline, so we are going to leave it at that and hit save. Now that we have all of our mini deadlines in, I want to go in and break it down just a little bit more. So let's go to our homework event on Saturday the 10th. As we know, we already added in personal projects, but going in line with what I was saying about having just one event titled homework, and then down here, we can add multiple assignments. We will add English. Now, this is one of the days leading up to the mini deadline of reviewing the plot. There are 12 chapters in Lord of the Flies. We gave ourselves 4 days to study, so we are going to say that we're going to review the first 3 chapters of Lord of the Flies. Save. And so then when you go in and create an event here and an event here, you can continue to break up the chapters that you focus on. Setting these mini goals within each day is really just going to help you reach those goals. It's going to help you procrastinate less as it gives you a little target to focus on each time you work. So similarly over here, our deadline on the 17th is to review theme, conflict, and symbols. So what we can do is go in and create an event here where we review the theme. Can change the time again to when you will be home. Let's say it's about 4:30. We'll give yourself about an hour to do this. Obviously, you can set as much time as you need. And so if we're focusing on theme here, then we can look at conflict and symbols on different days. So again, just to reiterate one last time, when you're working with a Google Calendar or really any calendar, the first step is to write in the due date or the test date. The second step is to create mini due dates. And then the third step is to go into each individual day and create a target plan for each individual day leading up to those mini deadlines. Breaking apart assignments like this can look like a lot of work, especially when you see it all written out on your calendar. And to be honest, it is a lot of work. It takes time to know all of the information about the assignment to then be able to put in Google Calendar or your planner appropriately. However, just like anything else, the more you practice it and the more comfortable with it you get, the easier and faster it's going to be moving forward. Also, because you are breaking apart each assignment, the actual time that you spend on working on the assignment each day is going to be less than if you were to just save everything and spend 3, 4, 5 hours working on it the day or two before that it is due. Breaking it up into smaller chunks and working on it over a longer period of time is going to reduce any potential procrastination. It's going to allow you to know that the work is going to get done. So that will lessen any stress or anxiety that you have about the actual completion of the assignment. And it's also going to allow you to do your best academically. Because you're not cramming everything in to the day or two before, spending hours at a time working on it, you'll be able to put in the time, put in the effort, ask your teacher for help if you have any, and make sure that you do your best before turning in the assignment. I really believe that if you take the time to practice these skills, work on them, and implement them into your daily planning strategy, you are going to see improvement over time. Try it out and see how it goes. I bet you will see some positive improvement. I hope you learned something from this video and can implement these skills and strategies into your daily routine. If you have any questions on this topic or would like to see any videos on a new topic, then just leave a comment down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.